devil is amongst us. Stay back, boy. This calls for divine intervention. I kick ass for the Lord.
Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, plead the widow's cause. Isaiah 1:17. I ask no favor for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is they take their feet off our necks. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Let's talk about the courts, the notorious RBG, and gender equality in the courts. Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII, and you can follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe to us. Also, give us a review. That helps others find us. And I'll be doing this show again solo this week, but as always, you can find my partner and better half on the other podcast that September does, which is the Geek Grills. You can also find her on Twitch and Twitter at 9 of 12. She is also helping getting out the vote for the Biden-Harris campaign. Heresy and Hearsay has a Patreon site where you can find us at patreon.com patreon.com/heresy and hearsay, where you can visit to help support us. Just $2 a month can go a long way to make this show happen. You can also contribute bits in Twitch or subscribe for free if you have Amazon Prime. So before I get into the show, a couple of things. So it's currently 1:20 a.m. on the 23rd in the morning. So I'm doing this late because I can't sleep. I would record this on the afternoon, morning to get it out for Wednesday, but I just can't sleep and I wanted to get this out. So if it's a little rambly, I do apologize in advance. Secondly, I want to thank my friend Jeanette for the wonderful birthday present she got me of a podcaster's mic, separate mic, really nice setup. I've not set it up for this week. I apologize for that. So the voice quality is going to be the same as always. Next week, I'm hoping to get that all set up because it's a complicated rig and I am not that bright. So, especially when it comes to electronics. So it's going to take me a little bit to figure it out, make sure it works and all that kind of stuff. Next week, I'm going to be doing the regular show, which is the podcast. I plan on going live on Wednesday night for the debate on my personal Twitch channel. I will provide that information in the list below. Once I figure it out, I think it's twitch.tv/SethRothII. I'll double check it. I may have changed the name and it's permanently changed. I'll double check it later, but I will provide it in the links below so that you can join me as I live watch and give my discussions of the debates as they're happening on Wednesday night. I will also be doing the same thing the following week for the vice presidential debate. The other two presidential debates, unfortunately, I will not be able to do because they happen on days that I happen to work, and I do have a day job that I have to attend so that I can eat and do the show. So I wanted to do a little house cleaning first, but that is the plan for the next 2 weeks is that there's going to be a regular show and then there's going to be a live broadcast off of my Twitch channel if I can get it to work. If I can't, that's unfortunately how things are going to be. With that said, next week's show, I'm going to focus more on local politics. That was going to be this week's show, but unfortunately, 2020 struck, and so I'm rearranging a little bit. So as far as North Carolina is concerned, their early elections hasn't started just yet, so you can still view the ballots and stuff like that. So I'll go over the Senate race, and I'll go over a couple other things. A couple of other key races that there are chances of us winning seats. I'm in a district that is unfortunately R20 plus. Even with them redoing the districts, I am still unfortunately in a very red district, so that's not going to happen. And I've got a brand new representative, which is, she's even worse. It's Virginia Fox, so she's even worse than the previous representative I have. So, but I will also mention her opponent and bring up some information. Hopefully that can change, and hopefully something will surprise me. But this is an R20 district, and that's really hard to swing. I will also discuss some of the state elections, because the state house and the state senate is extremely important, especially seeing this as a census year, which means that lines can be redrawn again, and hopefully we can get some better lines drawn and possibly get things taken care of. But that will be for next week. The following week thereafter will probably be the show that will the week after will be the show where, unless another huge catastrophe happens, which it's 2020, who knows, the plans are that I will do the show discussing religion and how it's been used in the last 4 years, and if you have those individuals who are on the fence, who are people of faith, I hope that show will help them. On with this show. On September 22nd, 2016, Sam Seder of the Majority Report, which is a podcast as well as a YouTube show as well, and Jimmy Dore of the Young Turks, also of the same thing, had a debate of whether or not the left should go ahead and vote for Hillary Clinton, or go vote third party, or sit out the election, or even vote for Donald Trump, because he would be the death of the GOP. We've seen how that works out. Because Hillary Clinton was not the candidate that the far left or the liberal left wanted as the Democratic Party nominee. Sam explained one of the important points of the election was that of the courts, and how the courts, especially the Supreme Court especially, would change if Trump is president. Mr. Dore kept talking how Sam Seder was voting out of fear and how it was not a winning argument. And then he said, well, what if there's two choices or three justices? And what if the moon has fallen? What if the moon falls into Lake Michigan? What do we do then? Should we just roll over and vote for Hillary? Well, I hope that if I have any listeners that may live near Lake Michigan, that they're okay. Because unfortunately, I fear that the moon may have fallen into it. The death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg allows Trump to choose a third nominee. Lifetime appointment. An appointment that can change the fabric of the elections. The fabric, not the elections, because of those of you who are old enough can remember Bush v. Gore, and I did a report on that, and basically that changed the election and changed how our nation went for 8 years. And with mail-in ballots, and how Trump is already trying to invalidate them as much as possible by his rhetoric. And if he's able to seat one more person on that court that is in his favor, that there is a chance that he could try to invalidate those ballots. And this is why it is so important for us in these elections, why the elections are so vital, because the courts matter. The Supreme Court matters. Justice Ginsburg fought as long as she could. She was a survivor of cancer, and she fought many battles with him, and she continued to fight. On her deathbed, she had requested that, as her strength was waning, that we not fill her seat until after the elections and a new president was seated, meaning the inauguration. In 2016, Merrick Garland was nominated by President Obama to fill Anthony Scalia's seat after Anthony Scalia suddenly died. This was in February of 2016. The Republican Senate, controlled Senate, made it very clear that they were not going to seat Merrick Garland because there was an election going on, though the general election wasn't happening. And they've multiple accounts of them saying, if this happens in 4 years, blah, 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 use our words against us. And they've all backtracked. They've all walked it back. They've all lied. There's no better way to say it. They've all lied. They're all hypocrites. And if these were true men and women of Christian faith, as they claim to be, they would have not, they would keep their word. They would have not said it in the first place if they didn't believe it, or if they did believe it, they would keep their word now. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, what did you expect? I knew this was going to happen. You know, I knew that this would be the situation. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to point at the hypocrisy, not on a political point, because politics are politics. I'm pointing it at a Christian point. Because the GOP claims to be the party of faith, claims to be the party of Christians. And if they truly claim to be that party, and if they truly believed that, then they would, A, honor the request of a woman who is dying, and B, honor their own words. Because that's what they said to do, is that they would honor their own words. And if you're not going to honor your words, then you're lying, and that is a sin and an affront to God. And you cannot call yourself a Christian if you're going to do that openly and blatantly. So, I wanted to be clear on that statement, that this is a very, and you can, there's 1,001 videos out there, montages of Lindsey Graham, of Mitch McConnell, of you know, Tom Tillis, who, by the way, is my senator up for re-election, and I emailed him. And I reminded him, not as a political front, but as a Christian, that if he's going to say these things, he's going to honor this as a Christian. So I emailed and I called his office. If you do the call the office thing, just understand, when you call offices of senators, be very respectful of the people on the phones. They're there doing a job just like you do a job, whatever you are. They may completely not agree with the person they're working for. They're just a Senate employee. So be respectful and don't get mad or angry. Just state your point, be kind, be considerate, say please and thank you. Because those calls get passed on a bit quicker or get passed on period versus those that are mean. But it's also better to do it in writing because there's a trail at that point. And I think it's important to do that. I just wanted to do both to get both of those out of the way. Especially if you have a senator in your area that's up for re-election, because it's important to remind him that A, you're a voter, B, you're registered, and C, you're watching. And that's important, especially if the early election hasn't started yet. Remind them of that as well. That, hey, early voting hasn't started yet. Maybe you want to keep that in mind. I wanted to bring those up first. I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to speak on that situation first. I will come and wrap around this again, but I wanted to talk about that first because here's the thing. This is one of those times I miss September, because September, I'm not a woman, obviously. And so I can only speak on certain points as an ally and as someone who supports these, but can't tell you the fundamentals and what it is to be terrified of what the ramifications could be. I can't discuss that because I don't live with that. I don't have to worry about that. I have friends, female friends of every age bracket that I do worry for, but it's different. So I will do my best to discuss this and discuss Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I will never get that right. I am sorry. To the best of my ability and what she means and what she has meant. As not just for women and feminine politics, but in gender politics throughout, because she was instrumental in laws of supporting gender equality across the board. Not just women equality, but also LGBTQ plus equality. So some of the laws that she helped pass or helped achieve was, or helped adjudicate. One was that employees cannot discriminate against employers cannot discriminate against employees based on gender or reproductive choices. And this was a fight that she actually fought as a lawyer. So this is one of those very important laws that she helped fight for, and of course in courts that she helped, in the shape, because it was important because a lot of women were, because of the fact that women were discriminated against if they got pregnant, and at that point they would get fired, Maternity leave was, you have to remember, it wasn't until the mid 2000s that maternity leave, period, at all, was a thing that was that was required by law. It's still not paid in a lot of respects, and a lot of jobs still tinker with it. But there is the FMLA, which was which was done during the Clinton administration. It's unpaid, which is not helpful, but it helps women so that they can deal with reproductive, issues as well as a whole host of other things. If a child gets sick, whatever, that's part of it. So though that helps with that. Another one that she helped in 1996, she led a ruling of United States versus Virginia, that it was the ruling was that state-funded schools must admit women. Until then, for example, in the state of Virginia, the case was, until then, women were prohibited from attending the state military or the Virginia Military Institute, which is a state-funded school. There was a similar case that was going on before that in South Carolina, which was another state school, which was the Citadel, which would not allow women in the state school. So it basically, if you're state funded, if you get funding from the state, you cannot discriminate against and not allow women in there. Number 3, women have the right for financial independence and equal benefits. Basically, this was the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which passed in 1974. This is something she worked to basically pass. This was before she was a justice, which allowed women to apply for bank accounts, credit cards, mortgages without a male cosigner. So the year I was born, I turned 46 on the 19th. There you go. You know my birth date. September 19th, 1974. Do with it what you will. If you try to steal my identity, they'll laugh at you. So, yeah, I run a podcast with me. So, the year I was born, until that point, my mother could not, the year before I was born, could not go and get a bank account by herself. She had to have a man co-sign. Could not get a credit card. She had to have my father's co-sign or her brother or, another man sign for it. She couldn't get a mortgage. She couldn't get a car loan without a male co-signer. 46 years, less than 50 years. Just think about that for just a few minutes. How detrimental. Because women didn't get the right to vote until 100 years ago. 100 years ago. And it took another 54 years before women could even get their own bank accounts by themselves. That's huge. That's a big deal. Because at that point until that point, they were at the mercy of a man. Their financial independence was at the mercy of a man. So if they were in a bad relationship, whether it be a father figure or a spouse or boyfriend or whatever, they could not get their own independence financially. And this helped push that. This also allowed for women in the military to get the same housing allowance as men. So this was a huge deal. Now, on the flip side, number 4, men are entitled to the same caregiving and Social Security rights as women. So, in 1968, Ginsburg represented Charles Modis, a man who had never been married, and claimed a tax deduction for caring for his mother, according to the Smithsonian Magazine. The IRS denied his deduction because he was a man and unmarried. And so basically at that point, it was basically the law was changed so that I'm unmarried. I'm unmarried. So if I am caregiving, if I was if I was able to, claim a deduction for caring for my mother who has passed away, but let's use that as an example. Before 1968, it would have been denied because I was a man and I was unmarried. So the law didn't pass until 1971 when that was changed, and it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. And finally, juries must include women up until 1979. Okay, so think about that for a second. 41 years. Okay. Women were considered optional for juries were considered optional for women. Women were considered optional for women. Sorry. Jury duty was considered optional for women. I know some of you women, it's like, oh, great, now that's wonderful, because when I don't want to do jury duty, I understand it's a civic duty, it's fine. But what I'm saying is that, so decisions on if a child should go to jail, or, if a rapist should get off, of course, because if you've ever been in a courtroom, and I know we've seen dramas and stuff like this, but they don't go through a lot of the picking of the jury. The defense can negate a lot of things for cause and stuff like that. So if you're, dealing with a rapist or whatever, or, and rape cases are already hard enough, and if you can't get a woman on there, sympathy, understanding. Ginsburg told USA Today in 2019, women belong in all the places where decisions are being made. And it's true. Women should be there. There's a quote from her where someone asks her, when do you think, how many women should be on the Supreme Court? And she said 9. And it's like, there's been 9 men on the Supreme Court for over 160 years or plus, 200 years, and no one blinked an eye at that. Why is it a big deal now? So it's extremely important to remember that she fought for both sides because she believed in gender equality, period. She's also been a lifelong advocate for LGBTQ rights. She was one of the people that voted in agreement that gay marriage is constitutional and should be handled. And it's one of those things that you have to you have to understand, and you have to that we've lost an icon, and we've lost someone extremely important, and we've lost this fighter. And this is why the elections matter so much, because that court matters so much. Because back in 2008, when Barack Obama won the presidency, at the very same time, California, a liberal state, voted against equal marriage because it was put on the ballot. When voting, the minority of the people will more than likely vote against the minority of the people. A representative republic is supposed to kind of bulwark against that. But it's not a fail-safe. The court is the final arbiter. If it had been up to the American people to vote if slavery should be illegal, I don't think the vote would have went in that favor. Or that slaves were citizens. The courts make those decisions because they are the final arbiters, because they are supposed to be until not even the Reagan, maybe the Bush administration, maybe not even, no, I want to say it was probably Roberts, and that group, when it started coming in, was basically nonpartisan. Now, there were still 5-4 decisions, but, in some respects, but it's supposed to be nonpartisan. So, they are supposed to, even the most conservative of justices are bound by law, because Roberts voted for the gay marriage as well. You have to keep that in mind. Because it's what was right. So take this, understand that. She was an advocate from the beginning. She spent so many years of her life fighting for those who couldn't fight. She was, when she passed away, when the Supreme Court, because they're about to start their fall session here in October, and I'm going to go over some things that should keep you up at night in a few minutes, and I apologize for that in advance. But Chief Justice John Roberts stated, "Our nation has lost a justice of historic stature. We at the Supreme Court has lost a cherished colleagues. Today we mourn, but with the confidence of future generations will remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as we all knew her as a tireless and relentless champion of justice." This was somebody that was a conservative judge. She started fighting in the early 70s for women's rights, and she served on the highest court at the age of 27. As she was, one of the statements, and I have already said this, but as a statement just before her death, as her strength waned, Ginsburg dictated this statement to her granddaughter, Claire Spina, Spera, and I apologize if I've mispronounced it. My most fervent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed. So now we're going to start a fight. And it's not going to be a good one. It's going to be a hard one to deal with. So I'll be putting links in the descriptions and everything of the stories and the things that she did and everything like that. So, keep that in mind, especially her politics during the, some of the things that were going on in her life and everything. So, but I want you to also keep in mind what's going on, because now with that bulwark gone, and you have to remember back in June of this year, the Supreme Court, with Roberts as basically the swing vote, basically shut down some of the abortion laws that were coming up, that were being contested, that were basically anti-abortion laws. And it's set them back for a while. So you have to wonder, as she has passed away, and if they can get a judge in. And there's going to be, I'm going to do some speculation at the end of this before we get into the end of the show. But you have to understand that Roe V Wade is hanging by a thread right now. And while that is going on, in ICE facilities right now, there in Georgia, a whistleblower came out about 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to bring this up, and it's other things because the news moves so fast. But an ICE facility in Georgia, a whistleblower came forward and basically stated that there was forced sterilization going on for detainees who were detained for immigration violations or waiting for asylum, and that they were also not taking care to protect them from the coronavirus. This came out, actually, this only came out a few days ago, as far as some of it, the 16th of September. And it came out a little bit sooner than that. So it was last week. So, yeah, we are in a place where the administration that is currently in office is either allowing or requesting for women who are in our detention centers to be sterilized, a form of eugenics. I'm sorry, that is a lot scary and shouldn't be happening. And I want you to understand that is, That happened about 70, 80 years ago with another country right before a world war. I just want you to keep that in mind during this election as well. Other than, we still have children in cages still. Just also keep that in mind. I know this is bouncy a little bit, but it's important because it's part of this. Because there are decisions that are going to be rendered in the next session of the Supreme Court. And some of these are going to be talking about what's going on right now. So, hey, you don't want to sleep at night like I'm currently not doing because I'm terrified of what's going on right now? Great. So, let me go over some highlight points and then I will read over a couple of the cases that stuck out to me. And I will put a list of some of them that are up for review. And the tweet is initially from Sally Cohen, and then I will put the actual list up later with this, but this is what she posted. So these are the cases these are the examples of what cases will be decided in the next term, starting in October. Has the Affordable Care Act been invalidated? Can children be sentenced to life without parole? Can corporations be charged as accomplices to crimes? What is the statute of limitations for rape charges in the military? Jones v. Mississippi, a case in which the court will decide whether, under the Eighth Amendment, a sentencing authority must find that a juvenile is permanently incorrigible before they may impose a sentence of life without parole. California versus Texas, a case in which the court will decide whether the Affordable Care Act's individual mandate is unconstitutional, and if so, whether it is serviceable for the rest of the act. Basically meaning that if the individual mandate requiring us to all get health care or be charged for the health care is unconstitutional. And if it is unconstitutional, does that mean the entire Affordable Care Act is null and void? And if it's null and void, there are a lot of people that are going to lose health care. I want you to keep that in mind. There are people that are on life-saving drugs only because they can get the Affordable Care Act. A lot of people I know. And nullifying that would set a lot of people to be very sick again. So that's an important one. The other one that I wanted to highlight, and this one, it would be very much in Justice Ginsburg's wheelhouse. United States versus Briggs, a case in which the court will decide whether the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces erred in conclusion, contrary to its own long-standing precedents, that the Uniform Code of Military Justice allows prosecution of rape that occurred between 1986 and 2006 only if it was discovered and charged within 5 years. So basically it's that what is the statute of limitation for bringing up rape charges against someone in the military? That's a big deal, because you have to understand that with the military chain of command and how that all works, breaking that chain of command to try to bring up charges is really hard. It's already hard enough to bring up rape charges anyways, as a woman or a man. But to then be in the military on top of that adds an extra heavy layer on that because of unit cohesion, blah, blah, blah. And it's one of those situations where sometimes they have to wait until they're out of the military before they can bring up those charges. And that may not be until after 5 years. So that is one of the situations where we'll have to see exactly what happens with that one. That's a big deal. So what happens? What is the end game? I don't know what the Democrats can do. There is no filibuster when it comes to judicial nominees. That has been blown clear out of the water. Can't. Nothing can be done about that. Harry Reid did it for the lower courts. Mitch McConnell did it for the Supreme Court. Can't filibuster. End of story. You can slow down the process, and we've got 45 days, but then you still got the lame duck session. They will do everything they can to push it through. What happens at that point? What weapons do they have? I don't know, because I am not a political strategist, and I don't know all the parliamentary dancing that can be done. So that is not my field. Stephanopoulos had mentioned to Nancy Pelosi, well, what if you bring impeachment charges? You know, that would basically freeze everything. And she says, I'm not discussing it right now. Which is, I don't know how that would work. I don't know how that would fly. I don't even know if that is a possibility. So I can't answer that question. And using the impeachment process that way, that sets a precedent that not thrilled with, but given the situation, I'm okay with. And certain, because 3 judges picked by a madman. I'm sorry. I have issues with that. If it can be stalled until after November, I would prefer it not to happen until, the inauguration. But if we can stall it until November, and that way he can't get the court to nullify anything about the election, I'm okay with that. Because it would be a pardon me. Because I know more than anything that I honestly believe it would be a hung jury at that point. Or a hung court. That it would be 4-4. And so whatever the lower court decided would be final. And it depends on where it would be in the lower court. If he gets it through. But Biden wins the election. Then what? We add three or four. We stack the court. We add seats to the Supreme Court. End of story. It's not an argument. It's not a discussion. It happens. If he puts someone on the court, that's what we do. I have no problems with that. I'm sure September would probably be telling me, well, that's a bit radical. And it's like, yes, well, sometimes you need to be radical. So that is my main thing. Can they have a quorum with no Democrats in the Senate. I don't know. I don't know how that. Again, that's a parliamentary trick, and I don't know how that works. I don't know if they can do that. So I can't answer that question. What really chafes me about all of this is that the House has been trying to get more coronavirus relief out since the summer, and the Senate has sat on it and not done anything. But now that this is coming, the Senate is suddenly coming back, and it just makes me angry. They're supposed to have a hearing in the judiciary today, according to some reports I have heard. I don't know what that hearing is going to be about, but we will see. For individuals, call your senators. Email your senators. Write and mail a letter to your senators. Make that happen, because that's important. Vote. That is the biggest thing. More than anything else, it doesn't need to be a squeaker. It needs to be a bloody landslide. Every person needs to vote. This needs to be unequivocal. This needs to be undeniable. This needs to be... Back in 1984, Reagan won every state but one, I do believe. This needs to be, a complete washout, where it is just a decimation of Donald Trump. I don't see that happening with. I don't see Biden winning every state. They're Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama and Arkansas are lost causes. Tennessee too, lost causes, unfortunately. Right now, I'm not giving up on them completely, but right now, this election cycle, Texas is in play right now. North Carolina is in play. Virginia is in play. Florida is still in play. Ohio is in play. Ohio's governor is backing Biden, and he's a Republican. A lot of people are seeing this virus as a thing, and this justice, this pushing through this, I think, is going to be a bad situation. They wouldn't try. As one YouTuber put it, Nash from Radio Dead Air put it, is like they would not be pushing this through so hard if they weren't losing. If they didn't see the internals and saw that they were losing. So keep that in mind. But don't let the polls make you sit home or not get your ballot. Go and vote. So that's it. The courts are important. And every election matters for that reason. Anytime there is a statewide election, it's important that you go vote. Every time there is a city election, it's important. Every time there's a county election, it's important. If you can go and vote, vote. Because it's important to vote. Because it makes a difference. And it was a small minority of people that either didn't vote or voted one way. that made a difference in Wisconsin and in Pennsylvania. And those two states would have changed the difference. So keep that in mind. If someone says, well, the polls have Biden winning by X amount, tell them it doesn't matter. Let me get you. Let me put you in the car. Let me get you to the polls. Help as much as you can to get people to vote. So that's this week's show. Before we get to this week's carrot and stick, Brother Bowie, will you lead us in a word of prayer?
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Bowie. So our carrot this week, we're not going to take it, and then there is being stupid. And Dee Snider of Twisted Sister fame says that these people in Florida who used his song while marching around saying, take off your masks in a Target in Florida, of course it's in Florida, are being idiots. So I appreciate that he's come out and said, don't use my song for this because that's just stupid. This is not about rebellion. This is about stupidity. And I appreciate that. And keeping on with our coronavirus stupidity, I mean, this virus, it's a deadly virus. We're still dealing with it. It's killing 1,000+ people a day. And then people do shit like this. I mean, fuck. What do I mean? In August, a wedding reception that was held in Minnetonka, Maine, has been linked to more than 175 confirmed cases of the coronavirus. And that 7 people have died from it. And these are people that didn't even attend the wedding or the reception. Now, I understand we've all been locked in our houses for a long period of time. Don't get me wrong. And a wedding is a big deal. I understand. Okay, I don't, because I've never been married or even been that close to being married. But I've had friends who've gotten married, and I know it's a huge deal. It's a big celebration, and it's important, and you want to celebrate it, and I understand. But we have a deadly virus that is killing thousands of people a day. Why are you cramming hundreds of people into this small venue so you can have a celebration of a wedding? Either postpone it. I know that sucks, especially if you already put money down. I'm sure that they would have been okay with that situation. I mean, if Dragon Con, one of the biggest conventions of the year, if San Diego Comic-Con can be like, you know what, we're not going to have our convention this year. If they can say, you know what, we're going to refund your money, or you can have it transfer over to next year and you don't have to pay us, that's perfectly fine. Then you know what? I'm sure that whatever lodge or reception hall would have been the exact same way. And if they're not, then then you don't want to deal with them in the first place. But 175 cases over the state. So basically, they all gathered, had a super hangout let the virus contract to everybody, and then they spread out across the state and got everybody else in the state sick. Absolutely brilliant. All of you get a giant stick for that. So, with that, thank you again for joining us at Heresy and Hearsay. I am Reverend Barney, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII, and you can find the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and any podcast catcher, as well as our website. Just Google us. Don't forget our Patreon, where $2 a day can help keep the show going. You can also find my partner on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12. That's NINEOF12. And you can also hear her on the Geek Grill podcast. I thank you for listening to us today, and bless your hearts.